The plan was simple: slip through the private, tree-lined security gates of Windsor Castle at precisely 1:15 a.m., completely undetected by the hovering lenses of the world's press. No official motorcade. No royal protection officers broadcasting movements over secure frequencies. Just a single, unmarked dark SUV cutting its headlights as it rounded the gravel drive near St. George's Chapel. Inside the quiet stone corridors, two brothers who had not spoken a meaningful word in over 3 years stood just paces apart, isolated in the shadows of the ancient estate. Before we reveal what this really means for the royal family, hit subscribe on Crown Scope, turn on the bell, and don't go anywhere, because this story is far from over. For years, the public narrative had been absolute. According to reports, the divide between Prince William and Prince Harry was an unbridgeable chasm, defined by public statements, televised interviews, and thousands of miles of ocean. The world had accepted that the quiet bonds formed in the wake of their mother's loss had finally burned away under the unrelenting heat of institutional pressure and personal grievance. Yet sources say that behind the heavy, reinforced oak doors of the royal residences, the reality was far more nuanced, governed by a hidden network of private communications that never reached the front pages. It was mid-August. The royal family had begun its annual transition toward Balmoral Castle, leaving Windsor surprisingly quiet, wrapped in the damp summer mist that often settles over the Berkshire grounds at night. King Charles was already north at Birk Hall, occupied with estate matters and private health retreats. Queen Camilla remained in Wiltshire, while Princess Anne was completing an exhausting schedule of engagements in Scotland. Windsor was effectively deserted, a sleeping fortress, except for two people. Insiders revealed that Prince Harry's trip to the United Kingdom had been organized under the strictest non-disclosure protocols. Publicly, it was billed as a flying visit for a select charity event in London, with his team confirming a tight 48-hour itinerary that strictly excluded any formal meetings with senior working royals. But as the clock turned past midnight, a private vehicle left a secluded estate driveway, taking a circuitous route to avoid the automatic license plate recognition cameras monitoring the perimeter. When the vehicle came to a stop near the south entrance of the private apartments, the air was heavy with humidity. The faint smell of rain on stone hung over the courtyard. Prince William was already waiting inside. He didn't wait in a formal reception hall, nor in the grand state rooms where foreign dignitaries are received. Instead, he stood in a narrow wood-paneled vestibule, a private corridor that connects the living quarters to the historic archives. Those who know the estate well describe this corridor as an echo chamber. Every footstep on the centuries-old floorboards carries down the hallway. When Harry stepped across the threshold, dropping his coat onto a side table, the silence between them was almost physical. "You actually came," William said, his voice clipped, restrained, yet entirely devoid of the coldness he often wore in public during official engagements. Harry paused, his eyes sweeping the room before settling on his older brother. "I said I would if the protocol officers weren't involved." The tension was immediate, a heavy, suffocating weight built upon years of unsaid words, misinterpretations, and public fallout. But there was something else present in that room. An unspoken agreement that whatever happened within these walls would remain entirely between them. What happened next changed everything. To understand the emotional friction of that late-night meeting, one must look at the slow, painful accumulation of distance that preceded it. Insiders recall that the fracture didn't happen in a single catastrophic moment. It was a slow erosion. In the late summer of 2022, following the passing of Queen Elizabeth II, the brothers had walked side by side behind the coffin, a scene that mirrored the tragic walk they took in 1997. Observers noted their unified front, but sources confirmed that behind the scenes, communications were handled almost entirely through intermediaries and private secretaries. Every time we tried to talk, it felt like an interview, Harry reportedly confided to a close personal friend during his time in California. Everything was filtered through lawyers, press secretaries, and staff who were trying to manage the optics rather than the brothers. William, meanwhile, was carrying an unprecedented burden. With his father's accession to the throne, his own responsibilities had multiplied overnight. He was navigating his new role as the Prince of Wales, managing the vast Duchy of Cornwall, and standing as the primary support system for his wife, Catherine, during her intense health challenges. Friends of William noted that his frustration was not merely rooted in public allegations, but in a deep sense of abandonment. William felt that at the precise moment he needed his brother the most, when the weight of the institution was falling entirely on his shoulders, Harry was gone, a source close to the household revealed. And yet, despite the public wall of silence, small, subtle lines of communication remained open in secret. It was Princess Anne who first noticed the quiet opening. Known as the most pragmatic and observational member of the family, Anne had spent decades navigating royal disputes with quiet efficiency. During a private meeting with William at Bagshot Park earlier that summer, she reportedly dropped a single piece of advice into their conversation about estate management. "You cannot manage a country or a family if you only speak through written memos," Anne remarked dryly, looking over her spectacles at the heir to the throne. "Some conversations require a closed door and an empty room." William had listened in silence. He didn't respond immediately, but the seed was planted. Meanwhile, in California, Harry was dealing with his own quiet reflections. Friends noted that despite his new life, he retained a habit of checking the UK weather, tracking family anniversaries, and quietly asking visiting British acquaintances about his family's well-being. When Catherine's health journey became public, the emotional shift was palpable. Harry had reached out privately, but the response, filtered through official channels, was polite, brief, and distant. He knew that if he wanted to break through the wall of institutional caution, it couldn't be done via email or phone calls. It required physical presence. The logistics for the midnight encounter took 3 weeks to arrange. It required absolute secrecy, not just from the press, but from intermediate staff members who might leak the schedule to royal commentators. Only a tiny circle was aware: a trusted personal bodyguard, a single senior estate manager at Windsor, and the brothers themselves. As Harry stood in that Windsor corridor at 1:15 a.m., looking at William, the years of distance condensed into a single fragile point in time. "We have 30 minutes before the night shift security rotation changes," William said, gesturing toward a small, dimly lit study at the end of the hall. "That's all we have." The room they entered was small, dominated by a large mahogany desk, 2 leather armchairs, and walls lined with historical family photographs. It was a room rarely used for official business, serving instead as a private sanctuary for personal writing and reflection. On the desk sat a single brass reading lamp, casting a warm, amber glow across the dark wood. Beside it was a locked, weathered leather box, an item that had not been seen in public for decades. Harry's eyes caught the box immediately. He stopped in his tracks, his posture stiffening. "Why is that out?" he asked quietly. William didn't answer right away. He walked around the desk, his hands resting on the back of one of the leather chairs. "Because it belongs to both of us, Harry. Not the estate, not the archives. Us." The box in question was an original personal keepsake trunk that had belonged to Princess Diana. It was the box she had used at Kensington Palace to store her most intimate personal items: family photographs, handwritten letters, and small trinkets collected during her travel. After 1997, it had been placed in secure storage, cataloged, and eventually moved between estate vaults, largely untouched by the brothers as they grew into adults. According to reports, Harry had requested access to the trunk years earlier, but protocol officers had delayed the request, citing the need for formal inventory and archival preservation. Over time, the request had become a point of contention, another example in Harry's mind of the institution keeping him from his own heritage. "I thought the archivists took control of that," Harry said, his voice carrying a subtle edge of suspicion. "They did," William replied calmly, "until 3 days ago. I went down to the vault myself and pulled it out." Harry walked closer, his boots making no sound on the heavy Persian rug. The atmosphere in the room shifted from cold confrontation to something far more complex, layered with nostalgia and raw emotional vulnerability. "Why now, William?" Harry asked, looking up from the box to meet his brother's gaze. "After everything that's happened, why bring this out tonight?" William leaned forward, resting his hands on the desk. "Because people think they know why we're angry with each other," he said, his tone measured and firm. "They think it's about books, or interviews, or who sat where at a funeral. But they don't know anything about what we actually lost. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, tarnished silver key. He placed it gently on top of the leather trunk, sliding it across the polished surface toward his brother. "You asked for this 4 years ago," William said softly. "I'm giving it to you now, but you need to open it in front of me." Harry stared at the key. The hesitation in the room was palpable. The single brass lamp illuminated the fine layer of dust on the leather hinges. This was the curiosity gap that had lingered for years. What was actually kept inside that private box, and why had William insisted on retrieving it himself? And this is where the story becomes more complicated. Slowly, Harry reached out, his fingers picking up the small silver key. The metal was cool against his palm. He stepped toward the desk, placed the key into the antique lock, and turned it. A sharp metallic click echoed through the quiet room. He lifted the heavy leather lid. Inside, resting on a bed of faded silk, were several stacked envelopes, a collection of loose photographs from the late 1980s, and a small, heavy object wrapped in a green velvet cloth. Harry reached past the letters and gently picked up the velvet package. As he unwrapped the fabric, the golden sheen of an antique pocket watch caught the light of the desk lamp. It was a classic, mid-century timepiece with a double hunter case, heavily engraved along the edges. But it wasn't the value of the gold that made Harry's breath catch. It was the inscription on the back and the missing second hand inside the glass casing. It was the pocket watch their grandfather, Prince Philip, had gifted to Diana on the day of William's birth, a piece that had vanished from public record decades ago. On the back, in faint, precise engraving, were the words, "To hold time still when the world moves too fast." "Where did you find this?" Harry whispered, his fingers tracing the worn engravings on the gold casing. "It was at Highgrove," William explained, his voice dropping an octave. "It was tucked inside a false compartment of Mother's old writing desk. When the estate was being reorganized last month, Charles found it. He was going to put it in the royal collection at Windsor." "And you stopped him?" "I told him it wasn't his to give to a museum," William said directly. "It was meant for you." A heavy silence descended on the room once again. Harry held the watch in his hand, feeling its weight. For years, the public had believed that the division between the brothers was absolute, driven by ideological differences and personal betrayals. But in this quiet room, surrounded by the physical remnants of their shared past, the anger seemed to dissolve into something much more painful, profound grief. "I thought you forgot," Harry admitted quietly, looking down at the watch. "I thought, after everything, you'd wiped all of this away." William stood up straight, crossing his arms over his chest. "I haven't forgotten anything, Harry. Not a single thing. That's the problem." The dialogue began to escalate, the emotional temperature rising as the true depth of their conflict was laid bare. "Then why didn't you answer my calls?" Harry demanded, his tone sharpening with anger. "When I came back for the funeral, when I reached out after everything happened, you acted like I was a stranger." William's eyes narrowed, his restraint slipping for the first time that night. "Because every time I spoke to you, I didn't know who I was talking to. Was I talking to my brother? Or was I talking to a microphone? You expect me to just sit down for tea while everything we grew up with is broadcast to the world?" "I was defending myself," Harry shot back, stepping closer to the desk. "You had the entire system protecting you. You had the press team, the advisors, the backing of the institution. I had nothing. I was being thrown to the wolves every single day, and you stood by and let it happen." "I protected you for 30 years, William shouted, his voice cutting through the quiet chamber like a blade. "I spent my entire youth standing between you and the press, taking the heat, hiding what was happening behind closed doors so you could have a life. And the moment things got hard, you burned the whole house down." The words hung in the air, sharp and painful. The anger wasn't new. It was the raw, unedited expression of years of suppressed resentment. But unlike their public statements or mediated messages, this was happening face to face, stripped of polished PR phrasing. Harry stood silent, his chest heaving, his hand still tightly clutching the pocket watch. The clock on the mantelpiece chimed 1:40 a.m. Time was running out. William turned away, walking toward the window that overlooked the dark quadrant of the castle. He pressed his forehead against the cool glass, taking a slow, deep breath to regain his composure. "You think I wanted any of this?" William said quietly, his back still turned to Harry. "You think I wanted to step into this role without you standing beside me? I lost my mother, Harry. And then, step by step, I lost my brother. Do you have any idea what it's like to sit in these meetings, planning the future of this family, and looking at an empty chair where you were supposed to be?" Harry looked at his brother's reflection in the dark window pane. For the first time in years, he saw not the future king, not the Prince of Wales, but the 19-year-old boy who had sat beside him on the grass at Highgrove, trying to make sense of a world that had fallen apart. "I couldn't stay, Will," Harry said, his voice dropping its aggressive edge, returning to a tone of quiet desperation. "It was killing me. If I had stayed inside that machine, I wouldn't have survived it. You know that. You saw what it was doing to me." William turned back around slowly, his expression pale under the dim light of the lamp. "I know why you left, Harry. I never blamed you for wanting to protect your family. Never." Harry blinked, caught off guard by the admission. "Then why the anger?" "Because you didn't just leave," William replied, his voice breaking slightly. "You left, and then you acted like everything we built together was a lie. You acted like the love we had in that house was just a performance for the cameras. That's what hurt. Not that you moved away, but that you threw away the memory of what we were." The revelation was a gut punch. For years, public commentary had framed the feud as a battle over status, security, and royal titles. But here, in the quiet darkness of Windsor Castle, the truth was revealed. The core of the conflict was not about power, but about betrayal of memory. Harry looked down at the open trunk on the desk. He reached out and picked up one of the faded photographs. It was an informal snapshot taken at Balmoral in the summer of 1995. In it, William and Harry were sitting on a tartan blanket, laughing uncontrollably while Diana leaned over them, shielding them from the wind. "I never thought it was a lie," Harry said softly, his voice barely audible over the ticking of the mantelpiece clock. "I carried those memories with me everywhere. They were the only things that kept me grounded when everything else felt fake." William walked back over to the desk. He looked at the photograph in Harry's hand, a ghost of a smile touching the corners of his mouth before fading back into seriousness. "If that's true," William said, "then why are we standing in a dark room at 2 a.m, acting like criminals in our own home?" "Because the world won't let us be anything else," Harry answered. "The moment we step outside this room, the commentators, the palace staff, the social media algorithms, they all need us to be enemies. It sells papers. It keeps the machine running." William looked at his brother for a long moment. "The machine only runs if we let it, Harry. But that was only the beginning." As the conversation reached its emotional peak, Harry turned the pocket watch over in his hand once more. He noticed a small raised lever near the stem, a feature typical of vintage mechanical timepieces, used to adjust the internal mechanism. He slid the lever. The back cover of the watch popped open with a faint click, revealing not just the intricate golden gears, but a tiny folded piece of thick cream paper tucked securely into the space between the casing and the movement. Harry looked up at William, puzzled. "Did you know this was in here?" William didn't answer. He simply gestured for Harry to open it. Harry carefully withdrew the folded slip of paper. It was aged, the edges slightly yellowed by time, carrying the distinctive flowing handwriting in blue ink that both brothers recognized instantly. It was a note from Princess Diana, dated August 28, 1997, just 3 days before her tragic accident in Paris. The note was short, containing only 3 handwritten lines. "My boys, if you are reading this together, it means you have found the watch. Remember that no crown, no kingdom, and no public duty is ever greater than the promise you made to each other in the nursery. Protect each other. You are all the other has." Harry's hands began to tremble slightly as he read the words. The emotional impact hit like a physical force. For years, media speculation had centered on what Diana would have thought of the brothers' public fallout. Pundits had written countless articles claiming she would have taken one side or the other, projecting their own narratives onto her legacy. But here was the physical evidence: a private, unedited message written in her final days, placed inside a hidden compartment of a family heirloom. Where did Charles find this?" Harry asked, his voice thick with emotion. "He didn't find it," William revealed, delivering the ultimate twist of the night. "I found it 3 weeks ago when I went through her personal archives at Althorpe with Uncle Charles Spencer. I kept it hidden from everyone, from the estate managers, from the press office, even from Dad." Harry stared at his brother. "You brought me here tonight just to show me this?" "I brought you here because I couldn't carry it alone anymore," William said, his eyes shining in the dim light. "I spent 3 years being angry at you, Harry. 3 years letting people tell me that you were my enemy. But when I read that note, I realized that as long as we stay divided, we are letting everyone else win." The realization hit both men simultaneously. The true tragedy of their separation wasn't just the public drama or the institutional damage. It was that they had allowed external noise to drown out the single most important mandate left to them by their mother. "What do we do now?" Harry asked, looking at the note, then at his brother. "We can't just fix this overnight. The public, the press, our families." "We don't fix it for the public," William said firmly. "We fix it here, in private, step by step, away from the cameras. No leaks, no interviews, just us." William held out his hand across the desk. Harry looked down at his brother's hand, then looked up into his eyes. For a second, the years of distance, the televised statements, the legal battles, and the tabloid headlines seemed to evaporate. Harry didn't take the hand. Instead, he stepped around the mahogany desk and pulled his brother into a tight, silent embrace. For nearly a minute, neither man spoke. The wind outside howled softly against the stone walls of St. George's Tower. The antique clock continued its steady, rhythmic ticking on the mantelpiece. At 2:05 a.m., the heavy oak door of the private study opened quietly. Harry stepped out into the dimly lit corridor, carrying the green velvet package securely inside his jacket pocket. William stood in the doorway, watching as his younger brother walked down the long hallway toward the private exit. There were no formal goodbyes, no grand promises made to the press, and no public statements scheduled for the following morning. The world would wake up the next day completely unaware that this meeting had taken place. The morning newspapers would continue to report on the unbreakable freeze between the brothers. Royal commentators would analyze body language from old events, predicting that reconciliation was an impossibility. The public machine would keep grinding forward, generating content based on the assumption of permanent hatred. According to reports, when Harry's vehicle passed back through the Windsor security gates at 2:20 a.m., heading toward the private airfield, the driver noted that Prince Harry spent the entire journey looking out the window, quietly holding the gold pocket watch in his right hand. Meanwhile, back inside Windsor Castle, William returned to the small study. He closed the lid of the empty leather trunk, locked it with the silver key, and placed it back into the secure cabinet. Sources say that when King Charles arrived at Windsor 2 days later, he noticed a subtle change in his eldest son's demeanor. The heavy, rigid tension that had defined William's public appearances seemed slightly softened. During a private breakfast in the garden room, Charles reportedly asked William if there had been any updates regarding estate security during his absence. William looked out at the lawn, took a sip of his tea, and simply replied, "Everything is under control, Dad. The important things are where they belong." This quiet encounter reveals a profound truth about the nature of high-profile human conflict. In an era where every relationship is analyzed, packaged, and monetized for public consumption, the most significant moments of healing often occur entirely in the dark, away from the applause and judgment of the world. The narrative of the royal family is so often framed through the lens of power, duty, and historic grandeur. We view these figures as symbols, representatives of an ancient institution operating on protocol and statecraft. But behind the formal titles, the military uniforms, and the pristine public appearances are individuals bound by the same fragile human realities that affect us all. grief, pride, misunderstanding, and the longing for connection. The secret meeting at Windsor did not solve every problem between William and Harry. It did not instantly erase years of public friction, erase legal complications, or rewrite history. But it accomplished something far more vital. It re-established a sacred boundary between their public roles and their private humanity. It proved that despite the institutional pressures designed to keep them apart, the fundamental bond forged in their shared childhood remained intact, waiting patiently beneath the layers of noise and conflict. As we look back at the ongoing saga of the British royal family, it is easy to become consumed by the spectacle, the headlines, the rumors, the dramatic summaries of who said what behind closed doors. But stories like the midnight encounter at Windsor remind us that history is not just made in grand parliament halls or televised state funerals. History is made in small, quiet rooms at 2 a.m, when two broken brothers decide that love is more important than being right. It teaches us that reconciliation is not an event, but a process. A quiet, deliberate choice to lay down weapons, even when the rest of the world is demanding a war. It shows that true strength does not lie in maintaining an unyielding public stance, but in having the courage to open a locked box, look at painful memories, and remember who you were before the world told you who you had to be. The silver key, the antique pocket watch, and the handwritten note in blue ink were not just historical artifacts. They were bridges across a void created by pride and institutional pressure. They served as a reminder that the promises we make to those we have lost should always carry more weight than the expectations of those who watch us from afar. William and Harry may continue to live very different lives on different sides of the globe. They may continue to navigate their respective duties, public pressures, and personal paths under the unrelenting scrutiny of the global media. But on that quiet August night in Windsor, they proved that the noise of the world ends precisely where true brotherhood begins. Because in the end, crowns fall, institutions evolve, and public commentary fades into the background of history. But the quiet promises made between family in the darkest hours remain permanent, unyielding, and forever beyond the reach of the crowd. The greatest royal secrets are never the scandals that make the front page. They are the quiet, unspoken moments of forgiveness that save a family from itself.